Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville is a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with...
Chris Shiflett.
Dave?
Johnny.
Nice.
Thank you.
Wow. On a Monday morning, too.
I know.
Hey, you remember the first time you shaved?
It was last Tuesday. If you look at my visage, can you not see?
Yeah. No, I can't. I didn't want to say anything,
Yeah.
but you were looking a little scruffy
That's fair.
right now.
That's fair.
And that's exactly where Manscaped comes in. Dave, you see where I was going?
I did. Well, now I do because you're there.
Follow me.
Manscaped has just launched their fourth generation, John. People 1 through 3. People were crazy about this one, fourth generation.
They're 4 for 4.
They are 4 for 4. It's their fourth generation performance package, and I have to tell you, I've never felt more alive.
Yeah,
Me and
well,
POD.
that's a bit much, but
Yeah.
Look, inside this package, Dave, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0.
Okay.
They were knocking it out of the park with the 3.0.
Yeah.
And they said, no, we can do better. 4.0.
But one better.
One better.
Yeah.
Their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose. Excuse me.
You get emotional.
I'm getting emotional.
Yeah.
Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer.
Yep.
The Crop Preserver deodorant, which
Yep.
I'm wearing right now.
Right now.
Crop Reviver toner.
Yep.
Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all your goodies.
Look at that. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000, John.
Man, 7,000. They could have stopped at 6, but
No,
they said
no.
1,000 more.
No RPM motor, a new multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock.
They could have
and-
stopped with one
No,
function, but they said no, multi.
They could have stopped with just not having a lock, but they said you need to be safe as you get out there.
That's right.
And it gives you the ability to turn the 4,000K LED
Now they could have
spotlight
stopped at 3,999.
This is what they do, guys.
But they said
Manscaped,
no.
they keep going. In case you need to shave when the power's out, that's what that 4,000K LED spotlight is
We've
for,
all
okay?
been there.
Super handy.
Now, this looks like the exact thing I need on my upcoming tour, which tickets are available at johnmco.com.
Go check them out.
I mean, how do I possibly go on stage without Manscaped?
Listen, those are my thoughts exactly.
Yeah.
Manscaped even threw in, how many free gifts do you think?
One?
Don't say one.
One would.
No, it's
One
two.
would be generous.
It's
two is too generous.
This is what they do. 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Bring your comfort and boxers to another level and another show.
Hey, look at you. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code DADVILLE at manscaped.com.
20% off, folks. And free
They could have
shipping.
stopped at
No,
19.
Don't do it. With the code DADVILLE at manscaped.com. Your boys have been through enough this past year.
That's right.
Okay? Treat them with the best tools for the job from Manscaped.
You guys don't look like dads.
Go
A lot
on.
of work done.
You don't look old enough to be dads. I'm a dad,
go on.
as evidenced by all this gray in my beard.
Yes,
Yeah.
you look amazing. I think you look wiser. than I
Oh,
do.
wow. I've got a lot
See.
of learned wisdom.
See? Yes, come on, man.
But see, here's the thing that I love about your look, because you got a little bit of the gray there, which looks great. I personally feel like whenever I would see those like touch of gray commercials or whatever, where like they
Yeah.
would cover up the gray, I'm like, I like the way the guy looked before he put the thing in. I think it looks
Yeah.
cool combined
I've-
with the tats.
Shame.
I'm totally with you, and I really liked it when all of a sudden you saw Jimmy Page with just completely gray hair.
Yeah.
Like he just went from the Jimmy Page of old. I think he was kind of dyeing it there for a while,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
just
right.
went
He's like,
I'm just
I'm
going
done with this.
fucking gray.
I'm
It
done
looks
with
great.
It's like Gandalf or whatever. you
Yeah,
know?
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
it's
a
just
cool.
there's a legitimacy that comes with it.
I'm in my transition to wizardry right now, as you can see. I'm not full wizard, but yeah, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Transition to Wizardry sounds
that's
like the
right.
song that we all wanted Led Zeppelin to put out, and they just never did.
I know. Well, there you go. That's the first song title for my new supergroup.
There it is. Just transition to
Unnamed
Wizardry.
members. as of
Every
just yet.
Rush fan in the world would just come to that without needing to know anything else. They would just be there.
100%. Yeah.
They'd be like, "This
sure.
sounds like exactly our demo." Okay, so Chris, we are thrilled to have you on. Thank
Dude,
you.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you
Oh,
a
yeah,
million
man.
times, a million. So one of the things we always do when we start the pod is what we call the brag sheet, which just kind of kicks it off, let everybody know the amazing things about you
Oh,
that
boy.
they may or may not
Am
know.
I about to get all like embarrassed here?
No. You are about to
Well,
swell
that's one of the
with
questions.
pride.
So
Yeah,
you
we'll get
react
to that.
however you react.
Yeah, you
Okay.
you be yourself. Okay, so this is a lot. Okay, member of the Foo Fighters, which we could just end there. There's a million things else, but that's a
Check.
strong. You're coming in hot.
Check.
There. Appeared on 8 albums with them, 4 solo albums, which this is cool. I love this stuff. Chris Shiflett and the Dead Peasants. All of these names are amazing. All Hat and No Cattle. I mean, West Coast Town, Hard Lessons. These are all these are the band. This is the albums that they should be called these things. Was a member of Me First and Gimme Gimmes from 95 to 2019. Recorded 11 albums with them. Honored with a signature. This is so cool. I don't know that have we had anybody else has a signature guitar on this podcast, John?
I don't know that we have.
See, that's a big one. Fender Telly Deluxe. It was based on his own 72 Telly.
Yep.
At 14, this is where I'm wearing my Arsenal kit. At 14, he had to decide to pursue either soccer or music.
Okay,
Chose music.
now I have to stop you there because this
Stop.
is just a nasty internet rumor that has dogged me forever.
Okay, go.
And anybody that's ever played soccer with me in like pickup games or adult leagues around town would laugh in your face at the idea that there was ever a moment that I was going to become a professional soccer player. But you know, out of all the like internet rumors to have, I actually kind of enjoy that.
That's a great one to have. Yeah.
I was gonna say, but you know what's great about that, Chris, is you get to control that narrative. You're like, some days I'm
Totally.
gonna let that fly. Other days
And
I'm
the
gonna-
funny thing is, I think that is true of a couple other people. I think I heard that. Maybe it's not true, but I heard that with Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. I heard that.
Oh, wow.
That he did have to make that choice. And oddly enough, another bass player. I heard that was the case with the bass player of Def Leppard. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Well,
I know
look, I mean,
Sting
technically,
was a big
it's true.
football guy.
You know, like I had to make a decision to go with basketball or music.
Yeah.
I went with music. Part of that decision was informed by the fact that I suck at basketball, but it
Yeah.
was a decision I had to make.
Yeah.
Although no professional teams tried to recruit me at an early age, I opted
You
to drink
decided-
beer with my friends on the beach
You're like,
instead of the more disciplined
Yes.
life of a professional athlete. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I like twisting it that way. Dude, this is amazing. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2021. I mean, give me a break. I mean, I love this too, by the way. Hosts the Walk on the Floor podcast, which is awesome. And finally, and most importantly, he's a diehard Arsenal fan. Which
Yes.
let's go Gunners.
which I just want to say when I saw that as we were prepping, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to get like 3 questions in. Because part of me was like, I don't even know if I need to show up. Dave is going to take over this conversation.
This is
Great.
This is
We can totally talk Arsenal all day long.
You know, the thing that John has had to watch, which is always a tricky thing about being a dad, is like you really do just indoctrinate your kids. It's just kind of like, this is what's going to happen in this family.
Well, you know,
And-
that's actually that's one of the great joys, because everybody always asks me, like, why did you pick Arsenal and all that sort of thing? Because for a lot of people, especially, you know, English football fans, you know, it's something that is passed down oftentimes through people's family. Like, you know, I support this team because my dad did, my grandpa did, my great or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't have that story, you know, because when I was a kid, I grew up in California, nobody knew all about, you know, the soccer, professional. So nobody knew anything about even like the leagues in Mexico or anywhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
Much less like the going on in the UK. But so I just honestly just picked Arsenal. You know, at a certain point, just out of, you know, when I first got turned on to the fact that there even was this thing and there was this culture, I just picked Arsenal for no reason. But I have raised my children to be Arsenal fans, even though like they don't really follow it now. You know what I mean? I mean, my older son, he just went off to college. He does kind of pay attention to it, and my younger, but all of them have had to wear Arsenal kits their whole lives. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, I went to an Arsenal fundraiser, one training session with Santi Cazorla a few years ago. Took my kids to it, had them train, so they will have that memory and that thing of like always seeing their dad sitting on the couch when they wake up on a Saturday morning, watch the game or whatever, you know what I mean?
That's right.
And so it will be that for them, and it will be that for their kids, you know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of cool. Like we're starting that family tradition.
Oh yeah, man.
Now.
And I've got 2 little guys, and they're both like, I mean, especially my oldest who's 10. He is like, he knows, like, and I feel like I know a lot, and he's like, no, Dad, you're getting it wrong. And I'm like, and he, he's that age where there's not enough folds in his brain yet, so he'll know. No, he scored. That was a game 2 years ago against Brighton where he had the corner, and then and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. There's just not much up there yet, so you remember all these things. You know what I mean? It's like,
Totally.
There's no mortgage.
Totally. You'll lose that when you're about like 32, son. Don't worry. Yeah.
It all goes away.
Yeah.
It goes. So here's the question we always love to ask after the brag sheet. Hearing that, like hearing the things you've been able to do in your life and these massive accomplishments and just the life you've led, how do you feel hearing that? Like, what would 15-year-old Chris say if, like, we time warped back to him, on the beaches of California, and I said, let me tell you what's going to happen? Would it be like, yeah, here we go?
Well, it's a funny thing because, when you're 15-year-old, when you're 15-year-old and you're dreaming about, being a whatever, professional musician or whatever, I think the sort of the reality of the life that it becomes is so different from, when I was a kid, I just thought it was like a Motley Crue video was what it would be. And you can have that experience too, you know what I mean? That's certainly like part of it when you're maybe a little younger, but by the time I think I was almost like lucky in that by the time I even joined the Foo Fighters, I played around in bands forever, and at a certain point joined a band called No Use for a Name, and started making records and going on tour and doing that whole thing. But by the time I got in the Foo Fighters, I was like almost 30. I wasn't really a kid anymore.
Yeah, right.
And it was just a few years later that I got married and had kids and stuff. So, that was the reality for me. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was like, didn't have a wild time when I was young. I did, I did all that stuff, but it wasn't like Lamborghinis and champagne or whatever you expect it to be when you're watching, like Panama on MTV when you're a little kid. You know what I mean?
The two song references are amazing, by the way. That's really great goalposts. Between like Motley Crue and Panama, you got a pretty good idea.
Well, that's pretty much the 1984 for me.
Yes. Well, so this segues perfectly because this is like mind numbing because you guys, the show last night, right? Like this crazy. I pulled up the set list for the tribute show. I mean, this is maybe. I mean,
we should put a link to it in our show notes because it's impressive.
I don't know that I could have made this up if you told me I got to. Do you know what I mean? Like, It is insanity. This list, like, it's everybody who's ever played like in a rock and roll band that is amazing, and all of the best songs of all time. I mean, I almost don't even want to start reading it because you can't stop. Not to mention that there are 53 songs performed.
Oh wow! Yeah.
How long was that night?
I think last night was like something like 6 hours or something. Good. It was a long. I mean, that wasn't 6 hours of us being up there the whole time, but there was a bunch of people cycling through. And it was absolutely amazing, and the lineup was amazing, as was Wembley, and just the whole thing was wild. To be honest, like it's not even something I want to talk about that much because it just generates so much out of context clickbait every time I do that it's a touchy subject. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like everything you say about anything gets like parsed and intentionally misunderstood and reprinted with a headline that doesn't match what you actually said, and that can be really frustrating. But I would all I would say about the whole thing, amazing, just amazing night.
Are you having moments where you're looking across stage, backstage, and like, I mean, I would think my 13-year-old self would just be slowly exploding, just like.
100%.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, like, you I would imagine you had several of those moments just in the 6-hour show last night, but throughout your career, you have had. I remember watching your guys' documentary, which is amazing, and you have had countless moments where you got to just be like, this is insane right now that we're playing with this person, we're playing with this person. How does you're on moment like 1500? How does moment 1500 compare to moment?
I mean, you kind of just can't believe that when you look back. It's like when you're out there and you're touring and you're playing shows and you're interacting with people, like, at festivals and things or award shows, whatever, like all these people that you grew up listening to, or just current bands that, you know, like we've been a band for a really long time. So we've like, you know, every few years there's different musical trends and different bands come up and fade away and all that stuff. And so we've gotten to like see all these trends and all these bands and stuff, you know, that we've shared stages with over the years all over the world. And it's wild, man. It's like you just can't even keep track of it as it's all going along. And then you do have moments like, you know, a couple of years ago when it was the 25th anniversary of the band and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and stuff like that. And certainly this year where you do take stock and you look back and you just can't believe it, you know? You just,
like, do you think, I mean, one of the things I love about you too is that how much you love music. Like that's something that I love. I love when people who have and are having a lot of success as artists and as bands also just really love music. Like it is my favorite thing in the world. Like when fans are in bands, you know what I mean?
Well, it's one of the wonderful things about you know that we get to do, and from time to time over the years we've done these kind of shows. I mean, obviously last night it's just a very specific thing. We've never done anything like that. But these moments where you sit down and you learn, you know, you grow up with all these songs. And maybe you kind of strum along with them here and there, but like you never sat down and really worked out the parts and really dug into like the craft of the whole thing and really like had to think about it, and work out all the details. And I mean, yeah, it's like a master class in how other people write songs and make records. When you dig into that Def Leppard stuff off Pyromania, you know, that Mutt Lange production, it's just wild, man. It's so unbelievably orchestrated and arranged and put together, and
no misplaced anything.
Yeah, and it's challenging because you wanna get those details right to do, you know, you want to, you know, and it's hard because like there's a lot of stuff that never repeats and things, you know what I mean? It's sort of, it's not just your usual like verse chorus middle section chorus out kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. Dave. Oh, that was good. What was your favorite book growing up?
Well, there are two that really stick out to me.
Okay.
The first one is How to Train Goldfish Using Dolphin Techniques by C. Scott Johnson,
of course.
obviously.
Wait, go, and I'm going to see if
you know what the second one is. Anybody Can Be Cool, but Awesome Takes Practice by Lorraine Peterson.
So, wow. Yeah. I'm not sure what to say about that. But anyways, we have to tell people about Wolfbane books.
Yes. I knew. I couldn't agree more, Dave.
Yep.
You see, Wolfbane books are some of the most beautifully illustrated books out there. Yeah, they're incredible. Mm-hmm. They are illustrated by Aidan Peterson, son of Andrew Peterson.
Dadville guest.
That's right, and Stephen Crofts.
I'm still thinking about you training goldfish, just to be honest. My brain's a little bit of a loop.
You got to see it. It's a sight.
It's a sight. Anyway, you're totally right about Wolfbane books. They're incredible. Plus, it's never too soon to start thinking about Christmas gifts, okay? Dads out there, I'm being serious, lean into this. It's going to sneak up on you. Wolfbane's The Story of God, Our King traces the kingship of God, the royal nature of his people, and God's great victory over the enemy from Genesis to what?
Revelation.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Now, look, I need to make one thing clear. This isn't a Christmas book.
No.
All right? I repeat.
Nope.
This is not a Christmas book.
Yep.
I would work with any gift-related holiday.
You would work with it.
And this book would as well.
Well, you have Christmas shows, John.
I do.
Let's see how this works, guys.
Man.
That's good to know for people, okay? Also, their most ambitious project is their Story of God series. The Story of God with Us was their debut release last year. It follows God's relentless pursuit to be with his people from creation all the way to new creation.
But Dave, how do we get these books? Because I need to knock out some to-dos off my shopping list.
Yeah, I feel that. It couldn't be easier, okay? Let me tell you.
Okay, tell me.
And I'll act totally surprised when I unwrap them. I'm just giving you a warm-up. I don't care. What, John? You shouldn't have. Just head to wolfbanebooks.com. That's WOLFBANE books.com and use the code DADVILLE for 20% off.
Plus, there's an exclusive pre-sale just for Dadville listeners. People, remember, head to wolfbanebooks.com and use the code DADVILLE for 20% off. So I'm gonna take a risk and ask maybe a dumb, because it's too impossible of a question, but we're all musicians here. I've listened to Foo Fighters, it feels like my whole life, and I feel like Foo Fighters is probably like the hardest music that I listen to, right? It's the music that I'm like, I'll go on a run, I'll be listening to like Chopin. I'm a classical piano player, so I'll be listening to Chopin, and then like next on my playlist is Foo Fighters. And sometimes I'll think like, if my mom could jump into my earbuds right now, she'd be like, "This is too loud," you know. But there's such a musicality
Yeah.
to your music, and I'm wondering again. This is where the question may be dumb because it's just too much for you to just parse down in one moment. But is there a moment or two in your live shows where you're like, you know what, this is the moment musically that I love the most? It's like the bridge of this one song or whatever.
I thought you were going to say, is there a moment in your live shows where I'm like, this is too loud?
I literally thought you were going to say the same thing.
Because that moment happens pretty much every night. And it's usually my guitar that's too loud.
That's right.
I know
exactly
I'm annoying my bandmates. I should really dial this
that's
back a little
right,
bit.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, there are definitely moments in the set that certain songs, you know, that just light it up every night, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always answer the same way with that. It's usually, it's like All My Life always does a certain thing to the crowd. It's just the minute people hear that gunk 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 gunk, you know what I mean, it just gets everybody ready, and then it explodes.
So good, man. So good.
And Everlong, you know, it's like
Yeah.
we generally close the set with that, and that one gets me every time. And with Everlong, you know, that's from the second record. I was a fan of the Foo Fighters, and so that one hits me a little different, you know.
Yeah. Do you find, you know, I was going to ask, when you talk about your heroes, I mean, is it something like, have you really realized that is how people feel about you? Like do you ever sit and sort of sit still enough and go like, God, there's some kid who's now, you know, in his 20s, who's like grew up maybe in his 30s, like grew up listening to me play guitar, and the thought of him sitting down and never getting to meet me or jam with me would be like the greatest thing ever. I mean, as you talk about your heroes, I mean, that's what you are to a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like, is that something
that's
that
sweet,
you've been
but
able to process?
I think it's something like you can't even really consider. And I'm much more comfortable with the dynamic of being home with my kids, telling, you know, like going like, why'd you do that? Like, you blew that one song. You know what I mean? Like that. It's like your family keeps your feet on the ground with that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what do the kids think of the band? Are they into the band?
Yes. I mean, they've grown up around it, so you know, I they know it, you know, backwards and forwards, and I think they're all different. Like all my kids now, like, you know, my oldest is in college, and then I still have two in high school, and they've all gone through like a lot of different like musical. Their musical tastes have gone all over the place.
Right.
But still, if they're not necessarily listening to like rock music or our band or something all the time, but like they know it, and they kind of come back to it. Like my youngest is kind of going through that now, where, you know, he's sort of found his way back to playing guitar a little more, you know what I mean? He's like listening to like Jawbreaker records and stuff, and like, you know, he made some comment about one of our songs last night that I could tell like, oh, he's been listening to that, you know, things like that.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah, you know, it's cool.
He's giving you just a little bit.
Yeah.
So what was the relationship? I'm curious because I've got two girls who are 7 and 10, almost 10. And, you know, I play piano. We got a piano in the house. It's probably time for them to start taking some lessons. They definitely are taking lessons, but I have taken the stance, like, I will not be their teacher. I'm not going to teach
probably
them.
a good idea.
What was your stance on that?
Okay, so let me just start by saying I kind of blew it with my own kids with the whole musical lessons thing. I tried to do what I thought, like, in hindsight, maybe I wish I had done, which was start everybody on piano. You know, not a bad idea. Start everybody on piano. With my oldest, I was definitely way too, like, involved. You know what I mean? And I realized that sort of after the fact, and I made it not fun, you know. And that's the thing. I don't know how exactly you keep music fun for your kids, because learning music is kind of hard. And it's like, I was just having this conversation with one of my sons and his friends this morning. Like, the fun part is not the sitting there taking lessons and the memorization of things. The fun part is when you're making noise with your friends in a garage somewhere, or playing a keg party or whatever, and that thing. That's the fun part, and you guys got to get to that, you know, where you're doing that. But you do have to take a few lessons to get there, and so that's the thing, is like, I don't know, man. Like, I made them all take piano lessons, and they could all do it, and they all learn, and they would do their recitals, and then we switched them to guitar at a certain point, and over the years I tried to be more and more hands off, and then I almost felt like I was too hands off, like, you know what I mean, just like I mean, I guess at the end of the day, all you really want is your kids to be into something, anything, just have like interests, and I sort of internally battle with that, like, you know, I don't. Well, it doesn't matter if they play music, you know what I mean, ultimately, but I would like to have that with them too, and I don't necessarily mean like to push them into being professional musicians or anything like that, but it would be fun to just sit around and strum guitars or whatever. So you know, I kind of never got that balance quite right, and at a certain point I really just backed away, because it was at least where we live and the environment that my kids are around. It's not like when I was a kid. Like, everybody had a high school band or junior high band or whatever when I was growing up. And there was a lot. That was just like a big part of the sort of the social fabric of the you know, youth culture or whatever. At the time that I grew up, you know. And it doesn't appear that there's much of that now. Like, my kids nobody ever organizes a gig and has a band and plays their friends' parties and does all that stuff the way that we did growing up. So I just don't. I don't know. I think there's nothing to pull them to it.
Everybody's inside playing Logic.
Yeah, there's nothing that they're shooting
Yeah,
for.
you know what I mean? Like, it's like people do it in the school band, or they do it at, like, you know, the rock school at the mall or something like that. And, like, I think, like, my generation turned rock and roll into baseball. In a weird, like, in a way that, I don't know.
That is a profound
I don't think
statement.
is going to have great, like, it won't be a good outcome for rock and roll. You know what I mean? Like, we're all a little too involved in putting, like, our, you know, the Ramones onesie on our kids and pushing them into that thing. And you know what I mean? It's like, if I could give young parents any advice, like, just don't do that, man. If you want your kids to play music, tell them they cannot touch your fucking guitar.
That's right.
And then leave it there, and then
funny?
leave, and then they'll probably pick it up immediately. You know what I mean?
My daughter literally slept in Ramones pajamas.
That's nice.
Of course. We all do it. We're all
it's
guilty.
that thing too where I feel like everybody's playing Pro Tools and Logic now as an instrument, and so it's like, nobody's learning guitar; they're learning like quick keys and loops and triggers and.
Well,
you know,
why
so
would they play guitar though? It's like, you know,
Yeah.
like my kids at a certain point, and I don't mean this like a negative thing at all, because whatever, it's cool. Like, but they all started listening to music that was not guitar, bass, drums driven.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so there's no. You know, I don't know. Like, I play guitar because when I was a kid, my heroes were Ace Frehley and Randy Rhoads. You know what I mean? And that's what drew me to it. They were these larger than life, superstar, you know, guitar gods.
Yeah.
And that's just what was around at that time. And now it's something else. You know.
So growing up, was your family like in on that? Was the vibe of your house kind of like, you know, you started playing guitar and they're like, you got this, like, go get it? Or was it like, oh boy, we're worried? Or
no, it's funny, you know, like my brothers, I was really lucky. I had older brothers that both played and still play, you know, and are amazing. And we're really just very music centric, you know, but and so I picked up a lot just by being in their presence, you know, and just being, and just like, you know, having their access to their record collections and all that sort of thing. But you know, my mom was always, you know, more or less supportive. I mean, supportive in the sense that she drove me to my guitar lessons, you know what I mean? But I don't think she was like, I think it's a great idea that you drop out of high school and seem to only want to go, you know, around with your friends making a racket. You know what I mean? No, like, I'm not going to pretend like, but it was, you know, like, it was a different time. Like, like I said, my mom, you know, my mom's generation parented very differently. They was not the same. Yeah. Sort of, they just weren't as, like, at a certain point, they just, you know, that generation of parents just, like, it was like, get out of the house and don't come back till the sun goes down. You know, it wasn't like, lights. We're going to be involved in every little thing that you do and come, oh, your band's playing, yippee, skipper doodle. You know what I mean? Like, it just was not that vibe. And I say that with love, because my mom was a great mom. You know?
Yeah.
I've never heard of Yippee Skipper Doodle. That's the name of my new punk band.
Skipper Doodle. What was the house setup? It was you and you had two brothers?
I had two brothers. I also had a stepbrother who came into the picture, you know, when I was pretty young, and my stepbrother. It's funny because we were like a rock house, you know what I mean? Like my brothers, like we listened to rock music, like all the in the 70s and early 80s.
There was no Chopin.
No Chopin.
in
It was a
between
lot of
songs.
Deep Purple
No.
and Sabbath and like that, and then eventually Iron Maiden and Motley Crue and
Right,
whatever,
right.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And my stepbrother Steve-O was like he was a punk rocker, you know what I mean? So he brought that influence into things, you know what I mean? And like Steve-O was like, he was cool, you know what I mean? He had like crazy hair and wacky shoes and stuff, and you're kind of like, whoa, what's that all about? You know what I mean? Yeah. So but yeah, you know, that was our setup. It's oddly enough, you know, like it's weird. We all, by the time I started playing guitar, like, you know, and really like playing in bands and stuff, like was more like high school. And me and my brothers had all kind of gone and had our own very kind of separate tastes. And, you know, we're all musicians, so we're all very opinionated, like your taste sucks and mine is right, and you know, all that sort of thing. So there was, surprisingly for a time, there was not a lot of like, we weren't the type of family that sat around woodshedding together.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You know, like I wish we had a little more
Harmony guitar licks.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, I just picked up a lot just from being in the room with them. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, one thing that I'm always fascinated by and curious about with other people who are either musicians or just anyone who's kind of in like the creative, whatever you want to call that, non-traditional, anyone who has a job that in my hometown they wouldn't understand
Right.
what you did, right? Is like growing up, whoever set sort of the model of here's how you make a living, spoken or not, right? So my dad, even though he was a musician, he dropped out of college to go on tour with his band, met my mom, but then boom, they have 3 kids and he's got to get a
Sure.
real job. So he quit the band, got a real job, and that's what I saw day in and day out, is him traveling, putting the hours in, working,
Yeah.
you know. And for me, I just turned 40. And I was telling Dave earlier, like yesterday, I like rode my bike with my tennis racket in it and played tennis, and then came home and worked on a song. And man, it's like my life hasn't really changed since like my freshman year of high school,
Right,
kind of,
right.
you know. And it's been this sort of like I've had to kind of deal with this sort of like underlying chronic sort of like I think I feel guilty that my life doesn't look like how it was sort of modeled, like, hey, here's how you put a good hard day's work in. And again, my dad never, you know, he is insanely supportive, but it's just this was self-imposed. So I'm always curious with people who are in music who don't have, you know, a regular 9-to-5 kind of job. Like, have you ever dealt with that in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up watching my mom. You know, my parents got divorced when I was really young, and almost to the point that I have like just really kind of fuzzy memories of them even being together. You know what I mean? So, and I was raised by my mom, you know, primarily, and my mom worked full time to raise 3 boys, you know, and I grew up with that. You know, my mom was a probation officer and just did what she had to do, not because she like loved being a probation officer, but because it was, you know, paid the rent and, you know, had health insurance and all that stuff, and she had to do what she had to do to raise her kids, and that certainly having her as a role model for that, like, yeah, it left a huge impression in me. When I it was a funny thing because I was such an undisciplined student as a kid, and ultimately dropped out of high school. But there was a point where, and I had the odd like goofy job here and there, but nothing real serious. And when I turned 18, I was about to turn 18. And I remember my mom came home one day and she goes, "All right, you're turning 18. Like, it's time to quit f***ing around." And so
Wow.
and she goes, "I talked to Linda down at work, and I got you a job. So, you know, on Monday, go in and see her." And so then I went to work at the probation department for like, you know, that was whenever that was, May of 1989. And the funny thing was, when I went and got a job, all of a sudden I realized it was like a life lesson that I wish I had gotten, a few years before, because I realized, wait, I can get up every morning, I can go do this, and I was still a fucking, I was a young guy, and going out late with my friends, all that stuff, but I could still get up and go to work. And through that, I earned a couple of bucks, and I bought a new amp, and then I saved up some money to move to LA, and then I moved to LA, and I was never one of those people that was like living off their girlfriend or whatever, that whole kind of rock and roll cliche. Like, I always had a job until I got to the point, when I joined No Use for a Name, where most of the time I didn't have to have a job, because we tour and we make a couple of bucks, and then we made a couple albums, and I made a couple of Gimme's albums. And I remember there coming a point, just kind of right before I joined Foo Fighters, where I was like, it wasn't like I was living high on the hog, but I was kind of pulling it, like making a living being a musician, and it felt really good. Like, it really felt like, I worked every job you could have, kind of in those years from, during high school and after high school and up until the the mid 90s or whatever. So I think that informs a lot about my sort of mindset. It always has. I don't think I'll ever be at a point where I feel like, where I don't feel like I'm ever going to escape that. Yeah. That feeling of like, this could all go away. Yeah. I mean, it could all go away. You know what I mean? It could all go away. But that feeling that it's going to get taken away, and I'm going to have to go get my job back at the probation department. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, it lingers there all the time,
100%.
Dave and John. Oh, that was good. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Dave, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Have you ever focused more on the problem than the solution?
So many times, John. It can be tough to train my brain to stay in quote-unquote problem-solving mode when faced with a challenge in life. Like, have you seen today's Wordle, for example?
Oh, don't say anything, Dave.
Okay.
I have 3 letters figured out.
Okay.
And how great is it when you find that own solution?
Oh, it's the best. I feel such a rush when all the letters turn green. Hard to explain.
Right.
A therapist can help you become a better problem solver, making it easier to accomplish your goals, no matter how big or small, and that's where BetterHelp comes in.
BetterHelp is a great option for anyone who's thinking about giving therapy a try. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online.
I can tell you, after a therapy session, I feel super more confident and a lot less stressful. It's like I feel better equipped to handle life.
When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there.
Yep.
Visit betterhelp.com/dadville today and get 10% off your first month.
That's betterhelp.com/dadville. It's always hanging in the back of your mind. So I want to talk just for a second about the podcast. What made you want to start doing that? Because it's great, and there's a bunch of our friends that have been on there with you. But what?
Yeah, I was just listening to the Vince Gill episode.
Oh man, what was so great about the Vince Gill episode was that was a few years ago. We were on tour. We were in Boston. I had this. I realized, wait a minute, because I was putting out a lot of them right then. And I realized I don't have any in the can for next week.
Yep.
And we were in Boston, and I knew that Rhett from Old 97s was coming to the show. So I called him. I said, "Hey, dude, can I interview you at the show? I need content."
Oh, that's amazing.
And he was like, "Yeah, no problem." And then I was like, "Okay, that's one." And then somebody mentioned that the Eagles were staying in the same hotel as we were. And one of our security guys had worked with Vince, and I said, "Hey, can you ask Vince if I could interview him?" And then he checked and he called me back. I said, "Yeah, Vince, said he's in room whatever." And I called him, and you got to remember, I never met Vince Gill, and I'm obviously a huge fan, and I'm a little nervous. And I called him, and I said, "Hey man, is that cool? Could I interview you?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm watching the golf right now. How about I come up to your room at 2?" And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, totally." And then sure enough, a couple hours later, Vince Gill turns up and sat down and I mean, he's just what a cool dude. There's no call my publicist and we're gonna sing and none of that. So he's just like, he was so down to earth and such a mellow, nice guy.
His whole thing, which he's kind of famous for in Nashville, is he doesn't text. So like if you text him, he calls you.
Oh, nice.
And it is Pavlov. Like you can, and hey man, and he'll say, sorry, I don't text. Hey, I was gonna say, and then but it's like this.
Yeah.
Everybody knows if you text him, he's gonna
Yeah.
call you. So
Oh,
it's like
nice.
a trigger. But yeah. So is there been any of those? Like, have you had any kind of pinch me moments, or what are some of your favorite moments on the pod?
Loads of them. There's so many. I mean, God, where do you even begin? You go back over the years, and there's just so many of them. I always say Merle Haggard's a big one. That certainly that might be the one. But there's so many. Mike Ness, Dwight, Lucinda. There's just a lot of them.
Legends.
John Doe.
Legends.
I've gotten to interview him a couple of times. And yeah, you mentioned that record that I did a few years ago called All Hat No Cattle, and that was actually that was how the podcast started, because I was putting that record out whenever that was, 2013, and one of the dudes from the label that was putting it out just said, "Hey man, you should make your own podcast, because then you could promote the record."
Oh yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's a really good idea, because it's hard, it's always hard to get press and all that. It's always kind of a struggle. So if you can invent your own little direct to fans way to communicate with people, I thought was a good idea. And then it was sort of like, well, what would my podcast be? And then I just basically modeled it after Marc Maron, because at the time that was the only podcast I even knew.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
Yep.
So I just I'll just do that. I'll just interview people. And after I did a few of them, I mean, I was so nervous when I started, but after I did a few of them, I just realized how much fun it was to get to sit there. And then all of a sudden you had a reason to reach out to all these people whose music you love, And then, as you go along, then you get to like interview all these people whose music you don't know at all. And then you get to do that thing. And, it's just been, it's been really cool. It's been on kind of a hiatus for a little while here, but I've been getting some good pitch emails. I don't know. I might have to jump back into it. Yeah, some good pitches coming across my desk here. It's pulling me back in.
Isn't it so funny to be on the other side of that? By the way, it's like John and I are the same way. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what our PR people do. Is like, doing the, hey, I don't know if you know this, but a band loved by the world is they're putting it. Oh yeah, it's kind of cool to be on this side of this. So
I now speak fluent publicist.
Oh man, I'm telling you, it is well said.
It's a language.
It is a language.
It is a language.
So I a little more, ask some things about the kids real quick. So the thing that I'm curious about with all of our friends that come on and are sort of, had a lot of success, what is it like for you? And I mean, I know now your kids are a little older, especially having your son in college, but what are the things that you found have been unique to your experience being a dad with the success you've had in the band you're in with kids? Like, are there moments that you're kind of like, I didn't see this coming? Or I would imagine one of the coolest things has to be, and maybe it's annoying and you're like, oh, it's the worst, but like your kids bring over a kid who is a fan and is like, oh my God. And your kids get like, yeah, it's my dad, whatever.
You'd be surprised. That has actually never happened. I mean, I honestly don't think there's been a single time that has exactly happened.
That's just because they're kind of cool.
The best thing would be that you have to do the opposite. Like, I'm gonna start laughing, but like they come in and you're like, no, I'm in this band. Like, I mean, and you're like, look, and you're like playing them stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know. You're like, you don't know that,
dude. I'll
see. What I would imagine always happens is like your kid's friend's gonna come over, and you're like, oh, his dad's bringing him over. I wonder why. He can drive.
Oh my God.
He's like, no, I'll take you.
I'll tell you, it's funny. I remember when my kids were a lot younger, and we played on the Grammys or something, like one of those award shows. And we were on TV, and I took my son to school the next morning to drop him off, and one of the kids in his class, who will remain nameless because he's a good kid,
of course.
He liked to stir it up a little bit, and I remember he goes, "Hey, were you bummed that they didn't show you on TV last night?" I was so like, I was on TV too. I got lots of camera time. What are you talking about? Like, it's only like put me on the.
All of a sudden, you're a freshman in high school.
I know, you know what I mean. I was like, he got right into my ego core. You know what I mean?
You're like, hey, which one of us played the Grammys last night?
I won a Grammy, punk. You can come over and shine my Grammys anytime.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah,
that is so funny.
But it is a funny thing with kids, because they all, in their own way, go through that moment where they figure out, and it's kind of tied in what you're saying, where they figured out my dad has a weird job.
Yeah,
That's
right.
it. But
right.
again, I also live in LA, and my kids are friends with all these kids whose parents have much crazier jobs than I do.
Right, right.
Famous actors and directors, all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a funny old little bubble.
Johnny.
Dave.
These are working
I thought we were
pretty...
gonna keep going.
No, I don't know. I felt like yours was a nice way to end that. John, as our listeners know, we are huge fans of Athletic Greens. Did you take your AG today? That's what we call
it. You bet I did.
That's just the street slang is AG.
That's right. Right after my 10-mile jog this morning.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, flex. Okay, we should race sometime. Not. Maybe put it on pay-per-view if we did for charity. Or I don't know. We could just do a foot race and put it up, see if we raise some money from it.
Yeah, no, I get. I'm not sure anyone would actually want to watch that. But if I had some Athletic Greens before the race,
listen, I've been on it for 3 months and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy. It has kind of a mild tropical taste.
So good.
That I actually look forward to every morning. Makes me think of Jimmy Buffett songs. I don't know. That's where my brain goes.
It's like Jimmy Buffett songs in your mouth.
Yeah, Margaritaville.
Well, listen, come Monday.
Hey.
See what I did there? I'll be ready for our 100-foot dash.
Let me tell you a bit more about AG, against street term. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right.
It's lifestyle friendly, Dave. I've said it a million times.
Yeah.
Whether you like keto or paleo or vegan or dairy free or gluten free, all that stuff. Plus, it costs less than $3 a day.
No, get out of here with that. Leave right now. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. Side note, John and the Micro Habits has to be the name of your next band. Just FYI.
Done.
Yeah.
Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into this flu and cold season, people.
To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase.
Think of the places you can go.
So many places. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Dadville.
Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Dadville to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
I was just saying, there's no, I mean, you said it well. Being in LA, there's a little bit of like a pedigree for it. Like Nashville's got a little bit because, there's enough generations where it's like, But there's no real, especially for those of us who didn't do it before, and as John said, there's no setup for it. You kind of get into this career, and you're like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Like, how do you navigate that well, and how do you sort of like set them up to realize what you do? But like, I laugh with John. Like my kids will be in the car, and some song will come on, and and especially a couple of years ago, and it would make me laugh and also sort of break my heart and make me really sad all at the same time. But they would go like a song would be like, "Hey, Dad, who sings that?" And I'd be like, Michael Jackson. I'd be like, is he more famous than you? And I'd be like, by a pretty significant amount. He's done. And then the next song, cue the next song, like Back in Black. Who's that? Are they more famous than you? Yep, that's another one that's...
Indeed.
Yep.
Indeed. Yeah.
They've done well for themselves, kids.
Yeah, that's...
So I'm curious about... you say your son just left for college. This is something I think about all the time. And I've got a ways to go, but what has that been like? Has it felt the way you thought it would feel?
Oh man, I'm gonna get weepy here talking about it. It's honestly, it was hard, man. It's really hard, and it's a weird mix of feelings because I'm so, of course, my wife and I, our whole family, so proud of him, and he's out there doing it and chasing his dreams and worked his butt off to get into the school that he's going to and all that stuff. So you have all that, there's all that like parental pride, and you're happy, and you love seeing your kids be independent and go out there and do their thing. And the thing that I learned is like, and they don't tell you this, and like nobody ever mentions this before you have kids, but like your kids, you get this really intense time when they're young, and then there's a point there sort of towards the end of elementary school where the outside world becomes a much bigger influence on them.
Wow.
You know, their friends and everything that they're doing, you know, around like 5th or 6th grade or whatever. And then that kind of goes on for a while, and then eventually your kid turns 16, gets a driver's license, and then they go from being your son to being like your roommate. You know what I mean? And they become, and that's a whole nother level of independence, and their social lives are strong, and they're doing their thing, and it's great. But you just don't, you know, that's a long way from AYSO every weekend, play dates, birthday parties, after school sports, and you know, all that stuff that, you know, you spend, your lives just become so like, you know, it's like that becomes your total priority, is all that stuff with your kids. And then as they grow up, there's just less and less in that, you know, less and less and less. And then, you know, the day comes that they graduate high school and go off to college, man. And it's like, you know, the minute, I remember, like, the minute he graduated high school at the end of last school year, there was the graduation, and then but my other two were still going to school, so I dropped the two of them off the next day, and that's when it really hit me.
Oh man!
Like this, sort of like this one chapter is closed, and now we're into this other thing, and I was like, just that thought of like, wow, I'm never gonna drop Liam off here again. Yeah, I've been dropping him off at the same school for all these, you know, like that feeling, and then we had summer, and then you know, he went off to school, and it's like, I don't know, man. It was a rough first few days, and I miss him like crazy. But I'm happy for him.
Did y'all do the thing where y'all went with him, or did he leave the house and go?
My wife went with him. I wasn't able to go because we were working. But yeah, my wife went out there with him, and yeah. So yeah.
I don't know that I'm gonna be able to do that. I mean, that's gonna kill me, man.
I think about it all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
really
it's so cliche, but like, God, man, it's just not enough time, and like it really flies by. And then as you're starting to realize that it's flying by, you're just like desperately grabbing, for more time, and you know, and that's when they're at their most independent. So yeah, it's parenting is
Well, it's a good thing to hear, especially
sappy.
with kids. Are John and mine are 8, 6, and 4. Or hello, I wish they were still young. They're 10, 8, and 6, and even now, you know, you get this. One of the great things about this podcast, you have people that say that, and they remind me, like, you know, I'm right on the cusp of when that, you know, the wings start to spread, and they start to, and because our weekends are exactly what you said, literally, like last week, and we were at soccer games all weekend. And at the time, I'm like, this is too much. I turned to my wife, I was like, look, I love this. It's my favorite sport in the world, and there's nothing I love more than watching my kids play. But this is too many. 4 games in a weekend is too much. And I could hear like, like echoing, you know, like fast forward 10 years to where I'm like sitting as the only dad without a kid at the soccer field. No, I'm just here to take it in. They're like, let's call the cops. We have a dad here who does not have a child that's watching young kids play.
Dude, I get it, man. There was a point there where, like, you know, we had 3 boys, so we had 3 boys in 3 different age divisions.
Yes.
Every Saturday, you know, through all those AY associates. So we'd be, you know, 3 different divisions, 3 different parks, and then, you know, like that, like Saturday hustle was so gnarly, you know. And when you're in it, you're just like stressed the whole time, and you just find yourself getting, why do I have to bring the Gatorade, you know, all that, you know, I gotta go at 7 a.m. to set the field up. You know, all that stuff. But man, I give my fucking left arm to go do that now.
Like right now, that's what I mean. I was just sitting there at the field. I mean, it was hot. The sun is beaming. I was just like, oh my God. And I thought, I promise, in 10 years, you're gonna wish you could be baking in the sun, watching your kid.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
the
so true.
other thing too that is, I don't know how, you know, if you've done it. The amount, the technology changes in chairs, sideline chairs, boggles the mind what they have now. Like, they have chairs that have their own umbrellas built in. There's some that come with a little ecosystem.
They kind of
Oh
rock.
my God, it's incredible.
Yeah. You never have the best chair.
God.
That's like a metaphor for life.
It's really interesting to
have the
watch
best
all the kid stuff change over the years.
Yeah, I bet.
We're so far removed from it because, you know, it's been a long time since we had like strollers and car seats and stuff. But then you see people walk by with some new contraption. You're like, whoa, they didn't have that one out when my kids were babies.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so crazy how quickly you say that phrase. Like, man, when my kids were babies, and like my kids like 4.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, the one that still blows my mind that we gifted some friends, I didn't even know about it, and Annie was like, literally, she's like, you got to come see this thing. Is the thing that is the like it fits in the car like a baby seat, and then you pull it out and it
it's the
sprouts
stroller.
legs.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's a stroller.
Oh yeah, we had a couple of those. Like I tell you what, the flip side of this whole conversation is there was through all those years you're collecting, like, we need the pack and play, and we need the travel crib and all that stuff, and all the strollers. Oh, we need the double stroller, and we need this, all that stuff. And we had all that. And at a certain point, we finally realized, like, like, we didn't need any of it anymore. So it was like my whole garage was baby strollers and pack and plays. And then I just cleaned it all out one day. You know what I mean? And in real time, there was no, like, sentimentality attached to it whatsoever.
Yeah, just
like,
get it
get
out.
this
Yeah.
shit
Yeah,
out of here. I'm never going to have to fight to put a baby seat into a rental
Oh,
car
the
ever
first
again.
time you put that pack and play up,
Yeah.
is the worst.
Yeah.
That was the
Like,
worst
why won't
moment
it
as a
click?
human being.
I mean,
want to click.
And then my wife comes in and uses one arm while she's holding the baby. She's like,
Yeah,
click,
just
click,
like
click,
a
click,
exactly.
click. Yeah, and I'm like, yes, it's
Hey, I wanted to ask you. We're almost done here. We have two questions that we always end with, but I want to ask you one more question before we get there, because when you were mentioning, like, setting up on Saturday morning for the soccer field and all that, and I'm imagining you were just on stage in San Fran or whatever the night before. How's the transition? Was that a tricky? I feel like that's always kind of tricky, coming from the road, transitioning back into home life. What's that been like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly. I mean, it's funny, man. Like that, my wife would always get on me about, because I had an annoying. I think I probably still do this, but I'm at least aware of it nowadays. But what I would do is I'd come home from tour and I'd just leave my bag by the door. And not unpack it, I'd have, like, my giant Toomey suitcase with all my week's worth.
Yeah.
And then I'd just, like, go down and pull things out of it as I needed. And after a couple days, my wife would be like, dude, you're not on road anymore. Unpack your.
Yeah.
Because I think to her, it represented, like, I'm about to leave again.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
then to me, I was
Yeah.
just being lazy.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably the thing, that, and, like, there's no maid here to pick up after you.
Oh,
Nobody's
man.
like coming in when you leave to go to sound check to make the bed and wash the towels.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. That is
Yeah.
still, I think, the most profound thing maybe that I've ever read. When I read You Two at the End of the World, that book, which is about their Pop Mart and the tour before. But one of the author, Bill Flanagan, who's an old Rolling Stone guy, said, because he toured with them for 2 years straight. So, like, he was out with them for this whole time. And he talks about how Bono's wife, I don't know if they do this anymore, but, like, when he'd come home from tour, he would stay in a hotel in close to their home, and she was like, you got a week just to land the plane. Like, sleep, kind of get out of, like, rock star mode, because the minute you walk in these gates, like, you are dad and you're running errands and you're dropping kids off and you're going to, and so he would literally just kind of, like, sleep a bunch, get on a normal sleep schedule, and then he would kind of reapproach the home, kind of like, shaved and ready to go,
it's interesting, because over the years, what I found is that my dad's schedule, it's more been the other way around for me. My dad's schedule more sort of took over my touring life.
Wow.
Than the other way around, Of course, it's hard to not be affected by, when you're out on the road. We have this huge support staff that are amazing.
Right.
That, like, if you
Right.
need some Afrin or something at
Right,
2 a.m.,
right.
there's somebody to help you get it,
Right.
and all that stuff that, like, that of course that impacts your behavior,
Right.
when you're
Right.
sort of immersed in it long enough. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. But I used to be one of those people, like, like typical, like, musician, sleep till noon or 1 or what, all that sort of thing. But I found more and more as I can't physically sleep past when the sun comes up, just from years of my kids coming in and waking
Isn't
me
it
up.
amazing?
So
I know it.
and so when I'm on the road, I still kind of rock that vibe, no matter how late the
That's
night
amazing.
goes. I still oftentimes I'll just force myself to get out of bed because
Yeah.
I just that
Yeah.
feeling of like
Yeah.
it's sunlight. I'm like doing
Yeah.
something wrong if I'm in
Yeah.
here like
Yeah.
asleep at
Yes.
2. You know, I don't know. Like that's been probably
Yeah.
the bigger impact.
You can always tell the
for me.
dads on tours. Like that is one of my favorite things. I get so much sort of twisted joy from when you're out, and especially like I'll go out at times and write with friends who are in big bands. They're doing the thing, and so I'm
Yeah.
out for the weekend on like a legit tour, like what you're used to. And it is like 7:45. You'll go into the catering, and there's you just know like there's a bunch of dads. I'm like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
all like-
Oh
They've
yeah.
been up for 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
and they're so excited to see you.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, what's up? Everybody's got a lot of
Yeah.
energy because they're used.
Totally.
But it is that culture is hysterical. And then you always know like the guys who don't because they roll in at 11:15 a.m. Like I think I'm gonna get a workout in. You're like, oh man, I've worked out 3 times since you've been. So
Yeah.
we have a couple questions that end that we ask everybody. I'll ask you the first one. So, what is the one thing that you want your kids to know?
Ooh, the one thing I want my kids to know. I mean, I hope if my life can be, if they can take one thing from it, it's to like really like, what's the way of saying it? It's like, it's hard not to sound corny, but to go for it, to don't be afraid of having big dreams,
I love
like
that.
when I was a kid, or even not so much when I was a kid, but when I was like a teenager, young adult. I mean, I was like my friends and people that were close to me say things like, "Dude, you're gonna fucking work minimum wage the rest of your life. You f***ed up. Like you got a tattoo, stupid. Like." You know
You
what I mean?
got a
Like you dropped
tattoo,
out of high
stupid.
school, man. Like, I'm not suggesting that I want my kids to make every dumb mistake I ever made, but like, don't be afraid to have a crazy dream
I
and
love
chase
that.
it down.
That's
you know?
great.
It is interesting. Side note, I thought about this beforehand where I was talking to my wife inside and I'm like, I mean, he's like, this guy is like the 0.0000001%, right? Of like getting your dream of like, you are a rock star lead guitarist in like one of the biggest bands in the world. It's interesting because it's like on one hand, like what a North Star to shoot for all those kids in their bedrooms, like shredding on guitar, like go for it. But at the other end, it's like, yeah, but how many does it work out for?
That's a small window.
Yeah, that's the gamble. I mean, I always tell people, man, you got to just do it because you can't not do it.
That's a great word.
Exactly.
That's a great
yeah,
word.
Yeah. All right. Well, last question. What do you want your kids to say at your funeral?
Oh, that's funny because we laugh about this all the time. I drive my kids nuts. Like I'm always like, when you look back at your childhood, like, do you think I was a pretty good dad?
Oh man.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh man.
was I all right? I mean, I know I kind of lost my temper a few times. I'm sorry, but like, are we cool? And they're like, God, Dad, you're so awkward. Like, yeah.
I mean, isn't that sort of that's true for every dad? At
Oh,
some
it's
level.
my constant neuroses.
At
You know
some
what I mean?
level,
Like,
for
because
sure.
you have those moments where like you lose your temper. Your kids are like, oh my God, I scarred them for life.
That's it. They're
I
done.
just fucking scarred them for
they're
life.
done. They're
Just
done.
ruined everybody's life.
100%.
Yeah, but what do I want them to say at my funeral? That my dad never let us forget how much he loved us. That's what I would like them to say.
I love that. I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so.
Oh
been
yeah,
great,
it's
man.
been a lot of fun.
We're
man.
such big
just
fans.
Oh, right
such an
on,
honor
man.
to get to
Well,
hang with you. Thanks for your
We
time.
gotta hang next time I'm in Nashville.
Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Please.
Right here.
Dadville.